Now, if you are eligible for this credit, you can receive between $1,000 and $2,000 per child in refundable credits. And again, that refundable credit is if you if the size of the credit, the amount of the credit exceeds your tax liability, the difference is refunded to you, the taxpayer. Now, these credits are primarily intended for families whose household income is $150,000 or less per year. Special emphasis for these credits is really put on households of lower income. So if you are below $75,000 per year, you do qualify for the $2,000 credit if you meet the other eligibility requirements. Some of those requirements involve whether or not your children are enrolled in licensed programs or licensed exempt programs that accept the subsidy. And if your household is actually below 100% of the federal poverty level, some of those eligibility requirements are in fact waived. So again, this credit, not a refundable credit, is meant to help families in need, families facing financial pressures and burdens associated with raising very young children. The next credit in this particular child care tax credit package is for contributions for employers and other contributors. And the purpose here is to encourage private contributions to help grow child care options, either through contributions to programs or initiatives that support and promote the availability of quality child care throughout the state. For this particular credit, contributions that are eligible, so eligible contributions can either result in a 75% or 100% tax credit. That is 75% or 100% of the contribution made. The maximum is $100,000 per year. And this again emphasizes contributions to the child care to providers serving children through the child care subsidy. I see I left off a Y on that on that slide, on that part of the slide, as well as programs and initiatives that operate in Nebraska opportunity zones. Now, these, if you're not familiar with opportunity zones, these are designated areas of the state, census tract areas of the state that face significant financial and economic challenges, and that have been designated by the state for economic development through private sector investment. This particular credit also allows contributors to make their contribution either directly to providers, to specific child care programs, or through an intermediary organization that manages different programs or initiatives that actually deliver or facilitate childcare. So, for example, it could be an initiative to offset some of the costs of childcare tuition for families in need, or it could be an initiative to help promote professional development among childcare staff. There's a lot to be aware of in how these contributions do or do not qualify. So it's important that when you have access to all the campaign information, to make sure that you're aware of what those ins and outs of qualifying contributions actually include. So the third and fourth sections of the tax credits that are available this year fall under the school readiness tax credit. Now, some of you may be familiar with this credit. It existed in a previous form that sunsetted a couple of years ago. First Five Nebraska and its partners have been working behind the scenes to try to get it reinstated. In fact, and it is now back in a expanded and improved form. So kind of like the child care tax credits, the school readiness tax credit is available in both refundable and non-refundable forms. The refundable child care or school readiness tax credit is really intended for individual child care professionals. So that includes self-employed providers such as family child care home providers, or staff that are employed in child care programs. And the amount of the credit is based on a on a scale that corresponds to the applicant's professional classification level. Professional classification is the system is set down by Nebraska Department of Education. What are the criteria and elements that go into assigning a particular classification to you as a child care professional? I'll share some information on where to find that, where to find the details on how all that works. It is on the Nebraska Department of Education Step Up to Quality web pages, and I'll pop that information into the link as we go through go through this presentation. Now, to get that credit, it's a multi-stage process. You have to first submit an attestation application through NECBRS, the Nebraska Early Childhood Professional Record System. And then that approval, that attestation approval is returned to the applicant. And then that has to be submitted to the Nebraska Department of Revenue along with the the school readiness tax credit application. There are several other requirements and eligibility standards associated with that credit. Those will be detailed on the literature that we have already produced and are about to release on the credit, and you can also find it on the Nebraska Department of Education website. The second half of the school readiness tax credit is the non-refundable credit for child care programs. And specifically, this refers to programs that serve children through the child care subsidy. Applicants can be individual program owners. They could also be partnerships, organizations, LLCs, or some other variation of that. And kind of like the refundable credit, this one has a scale of credit amounts that the applicant can qualify for based on their step up to quality rating and the monthly average number of children they serve through the subsidy. So again, this is a broad overview of the 4 credits that are being promoted this year. Some of our partners have already hit the ground running, and messaging has already been is already being circulated on these to sort of get things rolling. The important thing to remember about these credits is that the application process is usually a multi-step process. So it's very important for us as communicators, as messengers about these credits to be aware of the timeline, the deadlines, and those time-sensitive milestones that go into the application and approvals process. So I'm going to go ahead now to the next slide here. Well, actually, it's just sort of more detail on this one. These are the amounts that have been approved by the Nebraska legislature for these different types of credits per year. As you can see, the largest amount has been set aside for the refundable credit for working families. 2.5 million set aside for contribution credits, and 7.5 million put aside for the refundable and non-refundable school readiness tax credits combined. Once these amounts are reached in a given tax year, the Nebraska Department of Revenue does not issue additional tax credits until the following tax year. So Again, important to remember that these are the amounts. There is no sunset on these amounts. These will be available as, at least for the time being, without any kind of expiration. But these applications for all these credits are considered and reviewed on a first come, first served basis. So again, timing is important in the way that our target audiences complete and submit their application information. So a little bit, let's zoom back out from those close details and just say, this is what the intent of the campaign is. We want to make sure that as many eligible applicants for these credits are taking advantage of them as possible. Our best chance of retaining the dollars that have been set aside for these credits by the Nebraska legislature are to make sure that we're demonstrating that they're being used to good effect, and that they are widely they're widely accepted and promoted within the childcare community, within the business community, within the general community of advocates and allies who have a stake in promoting childcare infrastructure in the state. The third objective here is to make sure that we're taking any lessons learned from this, our first year in the campaign, to make sure that we're building on those lessons and making the process easier as we move on. We just don't know what those all of those challenges will be, but we do have a pretty good idea of what some of them are. So our goal is to collect as much information as we can so that hopefully incrementally, as we move forward from year to year on this campaign, as long as the credits are in existence, we're reaching more and more people, and we're making it easier and easier for them to apply. So here's how it all rolls out. We are now on the cusp of phase 1 of the campaign. It begins at the end of this month. In fact, a week from tomorrow is the public launch, the public announcement. Begins with a press event on Tuesday morning, the 27th. At that point, the campaign websites will be live. The campaign resources will be available for download and distribution. Those will include social media toolkits, signage, all sorts of other resources that you'll be able to take advantage of as a campaign messaging partner. We'll also begin really leaning into our media engagement work, where we're drumming up as much attention and interest among print broadcast media. We'll be conducting a direct mail campaign to childcare providers, to licensed childcare providers, to promote the refundable and non-refundable school readiness tax credit, the school readiness tax credits. And well, my colleague here, Mike Feakin, will be crisscrossing the state, telling all and sundry about the credits in live presentations before various groups. Phase 2 of the campaign, that's where we move into phase 2 in November and December of this year. In November, after the presidential election, we will be launching a statewide TV and radio campaign. Those ads are being produced by colleagues, or I should say, yeah, colleagues and partners of ours, our creative group in Omaha, with whom we've worked on strategic messaging projects before. And those ads will remain in rotation throughout the next few months through our partnership with Nebraska Broadcasters Association. We'll also have supplemental airing of those ads through free streaming services. And finally, as we start reaching those key deadlines, those key milestones where we are no longer where applicants have no longer are able to submit either their attestations or their applications for the credits. We start phasing those out, so we're not promoting those TV and radio spots after the deadlines have passed, in which people can actually realistically apply for and receive an approved tax credit. I should say that those campaign spots, the TV and radio, as well as all the social media and websites and various other resources, will be available in both English and Spanish for year one of the campaign. We hope to build on that in the future. We'll just have to see what we can do with the resources available to us. So in January, as I said, as we pass through all those deadlines, we phase out the broadcast component of the campaign. We start pulling back on social media outreach, promoting credits after key deadlines are passed. And then after tax time, after the end of tax season, we will conduct a postseason campaign review to see where it worked, where it didn't, and what we can do to improve. And that's where we'll need input from you. So what we're going to get into now is sort of a general overview of the strategy. And I'm going to preface this by saying that this campaign can only work to the extent that we have active participants among campaign partners. This is all about relationships. There isn't one single organization in the early childhood space that has enough of a footprint to cover all of the messaging targets, to cover all those key target audiences that we want to be made aware of the tax credits. So in a very general sense, this is what it looks like. Our key audiences, parents and families, especially those under $150,000 annual household income. Employers and other potential contributors. That could also be philanthropy, private philanthropy, individuals, whoever is in a position to be able to contribute to childcare, who has a stake in improving workforce participation, outcomes of children and families in their communities, anyone who is interested or has potential interest in being a contributor. Childcare programs and childcare staff. All of these audiences have to be reached through a variety of messaging channels, through a variety of partners. And the exposure of the tax credit campaign, the exposure of the messaging, the exposure of the resources will be more effective if they're hearing it from multiple sources. So whereas, yes, there is a brand to the campaign, and there is sort of a central hub of resources in the campaign microsites, the important thing is that any organization, any individuals who want to sign on as messaging partners really take their own ownership over it and feel empowered to get them that message out using the platforms and contact networks available to them. So we're going to be working through schools, through family support services, of course, chambers of commerce and economic development, community organizations, civic organizations. We are trying to build some relationships with tax preparers, especially free tax assistance services, libraries and other municipal entities. As we all know, libraries tend to be a resource hub for communities during tax season. We want to make sure that faith communities are aware of the campaign resources. Our friends in higher education, especially higher education institutions with early childhood programs, Nebraska Extension, that sort of thing. And of course, as we said before, any organizations involved in public philanthropy. My request to you, as you consider some of this information, is think about where you fall within this list, within this framework, and what kind of resources of what kind of communications platforms, what kind of messaging vehicles are at your disposal to get the word out. So again, the resources. Campaign microsites will go live. They will be live at this time next week. On those campaign websites, you will find a messaging guide that shows, or I should say, discusses key strategies for outreach. There will be pre-prepared social media graphics, pre-scripted social media posts, and when the campaign videos are completed, those will also enter the social media toolkits. There'll also be sample letters to the editors, newsletter blurbs, and other writing templates that you can insert into your various communications channels. There'll also be downloadable fact sheets as PDFs and campaign signage. And we're also putting together an online digital storefront where messaging partners throughout the state can actually order materials on a print-on-demand basis and have them shipped directly to your community for you to use in local messaging. Our two campaign websites, our two campaign microsites are nebraskachildcaretaxcredit.org and schoolreadinesstaxcredit.org. We deliberately chose not to combine these sites simply to avoid, I would say, to avoid overwhelming people with information. There is a lot of information that one needs to be aware of when thinking through how to apply for the credits and what the eligibility requirements are. So rather than trying to squeeze them all into a single website, we've split it up. We make it easy for people to find their way to and from between the websites, but these are the URLs. These are not live yet, but they will be live at this point next week. A quick preview of some of the social media assets we have on tap that you'll be able to download and access through those campaign websites. Again, these are available in both English and Spanish. Everything we produce will be available in those two forms. Again, these are available for you to print either on your own, in your own offices, on your own equipment, or you can order them, at least the printable, print-oriented resources. You can order those for your organization and community. So it's all well and good to talk about the overall strategy and the resources that we're putting out there. We have to be very cognizant of the challenges we're about to face, or we were already facing, really, when it comes to getting the information into the hands of the people who are going to benefit from these credits. These are not questions that have easy answers to them. They are questions, though, that we need to gather information about so that when we do our campaign review, we're taking that information into account for what can we do to improve things as we move forward. One of the biggest challenges we're about to face, or we are facing, is access to technology. Not everyone interacts with the internet through a laptop. Many folks in Nebraska use mobile devices as their key access point for the internet. Now, the application materials available through the Department of Revenue are PDF oriented. Those are not necessarily that easy to fill out on a phone. So there are some some logistical issues involved in making sure that we are not setting the bar so high in terms of ease of access that lower income families or individuals who don't engage with the internet through a laptop medium have a reasonably good likelihood of being able to access the application materials, fill them out, and turn them in. Again, multi-step process, which is also a huge uh, obstacle for folks who are not used to applying for tax credits. The other issue is language accessibility. Currently, even though the campaign websites, the Nebraska Department of Education websites are available in multiple languages, this is not the case for the Department of Revenue, at least not to the best of my knowledge. And it's not clear to me whether or not that's something that we can address this year, if at all. So we are faced with the challenge of what can be done to help non-English speakers navigate through the application process when they encounter the actual paperwork that needs to be submitted. So all of this to say that the information that we collect ourselves and we collect from you or campaign partners, if you're interested in signing on to join the campaign, that is all essential information for us to really understand the depth and breadth of those challenges, what it looks like on the ground, so that we're able to go to the folks we work with in government and say, these are the challenges we're up against. These are the challenges that our applicants are up against. This is what we need to, where we need to turn our attention. So I'm going to sort of round it out then by inviting you to put any questions into the chat box here in Zoom. If there's anything I can answer in terms of the communications aspect of our outreach on the tax credits, I'm more than happy to do so. Otherwise, I'm happy to follow up with you via email. My email address is there at the bottom of the screen, mmedwick@first5nebraska.org. If you have more detailed questions about the tax credits, we'll do our best to get those answered as well. So that being said, I'm going to ask my colleagues here who have been helping me keep an eye on things with chat, whether or not we have anything in the Zoom chat box.
Medwick, I think one of the major questions I've been trying to keep track of some of the technical questions on the programs, but from Sarah Arnett, our favorite in Wood River, it's a good one here. What is actually involved in becoming a campaign partner? Are there obligations? Are there perks?
Excellent question.
Yeah. What's the story?
All right. Excellent question. I should have led with this. What is involved in becoming a campaign partner? Well, on the campaign websites, there is a join the campaign link where you'll just fill in a little bit of information about who you are, what organization you represent, and who are the kinds of audiences that you are most likely to be able to engage. There are no obligations at all. If you sign on as a campaign partner, you have access to all of the materials on the campaign websites, whether or not you do, or whether or not you sign on or you don't. What we're offering the campaign partners is recognition on the campaign microsites and on other campaign materials, so that they're being publicly recognized as proponents of the tax credits and partners of getting the message out. So no obligations, no requirements, just your goodwill statement that yes, we'd like to help get the word out about the credits. Does that help, Sarah? Okay, other questions? Will the presentation in English also be available after today's session? Okay, yes, the presentation slides. My mistake. Let me pop the link to the presentation slides for our Spanish speaking guests. Into chat.
Mike, this is Jennifer Haggart. That was my question. The slides were shared in Spanish, but not in English. And so I was told that will be shared in English as well for us.
Yep, they will.
Thanks.
Other questions? Do the private sector contributions have to be made to a nonprofit center, or will contributions to for-profit centers qualify as well? And Feek and I'm going to defer to you and Elizabeth on this, but yes, for-profit, certainly. The important thing is you have to meet the eligibility requirements, and the recipient of the contribution has to be a tax-paying entity. Do you want to expand on that at all, Fegan or Elizabeth?
Well, I mean, I would also add that there is a little bit of a definition, there is a little bit of a caveat for the for-profit, and mainly what we're potentially seeing is for family, the in-home providers, is that contributions cannot be deemed as like just the tuition payment or as the payment for services. It really does need to be a contribution, an eligible contribution that is made at what's called an arm's length transaction, so that it does stand up to scrutiny in the eyes of the Department of Revenue. So it can't just be a parent making a payment to the provider, for tuition purposes. It does need to be above and beyond that, if that makes sense.
So are nonprofit programs not eligible for the non-refundable credit since there is no income tax liability?
Right. The program itself has to generate some sort of a liability. Now,
Yes.
it is, yeah, it is non-refundable. So even if the liability, the tax liability that program faces is $500, and the credit generated is for $700, all that happens is that $500 liability is wiped away. That kind of remaining $200 can be carried forward, but since it is non-refundable, there is no, for lack of a better word, cash in hand. It doesn't generate into actual cash being returned to the program. It just wipes away that tax liability.
That's right. Okay, just scanning for other questions that I should be aware of. I think Fegan, you've done a really good job at answering these as we've gone along through the presentation. What I'll probably close on is if you attended this, if you registered for this particular overview, we'll be following up with you via email when as soon as the campaign microsites go live. I'll include some additional information on the process for submitting either yourself or your organization as a publicly recognized campaign partner. And we would like to keep you in the loop with additional campaign information as it rolls out throughout the remainder of this year. We'll be doing another check-in later this year, so we can, we'll make sure we're all on the same page. We know how things are performing so far, and to take feedback and input on making adjustments and course corrections as we go.
Medrick, just one final question then, and I think it's important to address here from Sarah James is there any way to know how much of the 2.5 million child care tax credit for contributions has been claimed so far? And yes, so in the chat box, I did include the link to the Department of Revenue site that shows the authorization table. It has been updated to August 8th of 2024. And it shows that $422,525 has been reserved, that has been authorized. And so there is, 2 million and change left over out of that 2.5. So yeah, that will kind of give you an idea of where those credits sit.
Thanks, Fekin. That's correct. Karen had just asked me separately where the link is to sign on as a campaign partner. Those links will be embedded in the campaign websites as soon as they launch. You'll be able to find them in the join the campaign section of the page of the site. Look through it, fill out the form. Very simple, very easily, and we'll be more than happy to put you on our rolls as a publicly recognized partner. I'm not seeing other questions that don't look like they've already been addressed. So if I'll stay online for a while if anyone who wants to ask me questions directly, either by voice or through chat. Otherwise, I want to thank you for joining us. I appreciate your time today, and I hope that you'll be alongside us as we roll this out over the next few months. Thank you.